to me, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I will give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron, thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now therefore, O ye kings, be instructed, you judges of the earth.
Hello, good morning, welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of Psalms, chapter 49. Not really chapter, it's Psalm 49. Psalm, the book that is genuinely, I was going to say genuinely divided properly, but I've been all along doing these little moves in accordance with a theory that despite it being inconvenient, I agree with it. It'd be simpler to just say, oh yeah, for the chief musician. But I mean, they're all songs. A lot of this is just musical notation that's just left in there. Like I was thinking about Selah when I was waking up this morning. Selah, and in my songs I often sing it, which I always thought was funny because I'm pretty sure you weren't supposed to sing it because it means suspension, and it means that the singing would be interrupted there, we presume. But of course, it also occurs at the end of songs sometimes, which of course the singing would be interrupted. Why put is it a question of punctuation? I don't know. So let's read Psalm 49. A psalm for the sons of Korah. Hear this, all ye people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. Rich and poor together. My mouth shall speak of wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall be of understanding. I will incline my ear to a parable. I will open my dark saying upon the harp. Wherefore should I fear in the days of evil, when the iniquity of my heels shall compass me about? They that trust in their wealth, and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches, none of them can by any means redeem his brother, nor give to God a ransom for him. For the redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever. That he should still live forever, and not see corruption, for he seeth that wise men die. Likewise, the fool and the brutish person perisheth, and leave their wealth to others. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. Their way is their folly, yet their posterity approve their sayings. Selah. All right, 1 second here. I gotta make it through the study on a low water supply. All right. Selah. Pause, meditate, suspend. Like sheep, they are laid in the grave. Death shall feed on them, and the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning. And their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling. But God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. Selah. Be not thou afraid when Be not thou afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. For when he dieth, he shall carry nothing away. His glory shall not descend after him. Though while he liveth, he blessed his soul, and men will praise thee. When thou doest, Though while he lived, he blessed his soul, and men will praise thee when thou doest well to thyself. He shall go to the generation of his fathers. They shall never see light. Man that is in honor and understandeth not is like the beasts that perish. I like that psalm. It's an instructive psalm. It should have been... It's just more like it's honestly instructive. This is probably just generally considered natural wisdom. The dark saying. So, a psalm for the sons of Korah. Again, another one for the sons of Korah. And again, they were. It's not clear whether it is because they are the singers of the priesthood, or particulars, or if that was the name of. And now the sons of Korah. No, but there was a sons of Korah, as we discussed. Of course, there was an actual. So it is an actual reference to a story from the Old Testament, which is very instructive and remarkable. Like I said, I hadn't thought about it in so long. I forgot that it was the earth opened up. It was that one, Korah. So, but whether we should regard it as in something having to do with that, is there some sort of thing to be mindful of? Because Korah, the gainsaying of Korah, he was trying to exalt himself. He reached for something that had been given to someone else. There's nothing wrong with taking your office. What has God given you to do? What are your gifts? It's like, but to grasp for what is someone else's is covetousness, jealousy, and is the root of many, envying and strife between brethren. I think sometimes because people, having many gifts makes me a little blind to what it's like to be wanting to find something. Probably, because I've got too many things to work on. I literally. I find myself often at a loss of how to dispose of the things God has given me. And so, the important thing, though, not the important thing, but let's delve in here. Hear this, all ye people, give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world. A call to hear. We must open our ears to God to be able to really understand what he has to say. And this is, of course, we say to God, and that's what the psalmist is saying. He's saying to all the worlds, both high and low, rich and poor, everyone together needs to listen to this, because I'm going to speak of wisdom. The meditation of my heart shall be of understand. I'm going to talk of how to understand, a kind of understanding. I said this is garden variety wisdom, basic. I will incline my ear to a parable. I will open my dark saying upon a harp. That is a typical, song type device where you talk about the fact that you're singing, which is it's not, nothing wrong with that. That's a good device. You don't use it all the time. But I like that referring to dark saying. I always like the part when it said, a fierce king shall stand up understanding dark sentences, dark sayings. There are some dark truths, like I could think of let's go through this first. Because there's a dark wisdom. There's a wisdom that, like the hidden wisdom. Like which none of the princes of this world knew, for had they known it, they would not have crucified Christ. Because there's a dark wisdom that says, I shouldn't kill the Son of God now. You know what I mean? They would that option, that thought may have occurred to them, but it was hidden from them because they did not believe in him. If they had known what they were doing, they would certainly not have done it. You know what I mean? That's dark wisdom. When things are hidden, you can't see the thing that's creeping up behind you, because it's dark, because it's hidden in darkness, and the wisdom does not occur to you because you do not see what is in darkness. You know what I mean? And so that refers to the blindness of man, because that is the darkness. The light that lighteth every man that enters into the world is the light of Christ. I mean, as far as that is the light, the true light. We see things and stuff, but it's like we don't know what we see. We don't know the real nature of things. We continually investigate. They still don't really know the nature of things. They go down to the most elementary particles, and I've heard them talk about it, and at the quantum level, things are it gets weird. It is weird. I mean, that's all they talk about these days, is how weird things get at the most basic level, and you know what I mean. And do we really know? There's a lot we really don't know. We've given names to a lot of things. That's really clever. Well, that's a giraffe, of course. That's what that is? Are you sure about that? That you just made that up. So, you know what I'm saying? Man, as it says, that's what man does. He gives everything its name, doesn't he? He names it after his own thinking, after himself. They name their lands after themselves. Stringini Hill, how about that? I never, thinking, oh, that's what it'll be called forever. Because it's mine. It belongs to me. That's a foolishness. That's a blindness in that. I will open my dark saying on the harp. Wherefore should I fear in the days of evil, when the iniquity of my heels shall compass me about? So why should I fear? The consequences. When the iniquity of my heels shall compass me about. The days of evil refers to evil, is referring to like the kind of calamity that can fall upon you, the evil things that can occur, and a beast can come out of anything or whatever. You can suffer many evils. And all I'm saying is there is the days, also the days of evil also refer to it's like, you don't know when you're going to go, but the message of the psalm is you're going. And you don't know when those last days are. You might, but the thing is, when you get very old, you're in the days of evil. It's like that's coming. You will die. It's just inevitable. But people don't fear those days as they rush on. The days of evil are, in some ways, are all the days of your life, because that's the day. Every day, there's sufficient to the day is the evil thereof, saith the Lord Jesus Christ. That's what he said. Every day, he was saying that one of the reasons he said, don't get too caught up about tomorrow, because tomorrow is tomorrow's gonna take care of itself to on a certain degree and level. But each day has enough challenge in it for your full attention. And that isn't like a thing against long-term planning per se, but it does address the folly of long-term planning. It's like I was saying to my wife yesterday. She made a remark, we changed plans. I'm like, oh, no, we didn't change plans. Circumstances changed, and we were forced to change. We weren't like, and I know she didn't mean this, but it sounds like, oh, here, well, we have, I don't know why I like the gesture with paper. It's like, we have one plan, and then, oh, no, we're going to go with a different plan. We'll just switch plans. It wasn't like that. It was like sometimes a train comes along and runs you over, and there's a new plan. But you didn't know it was coming. And that's the thing. We don't know what's coming. So all plans are somewhat, you have to regard them as they truly are, as James advised. You who say we're going to go this year and that year and we're going to do this and that and the other, and it's like, shit, you should say, if the Lord will. Should at least be that superstitious to invoke the name of the Lord when you speak so hopefully of the future. Because without the Lord, there is no hope for the future. There are only days of evil. Without God, with the iniquity of your heels compassing you about. It's like all the sins of your life following you all the way down to your last days. Your last days on planet Earth, and you're going to die. And all your iniquities are there with you, and your conscience and all that is, you're ready for the judgment. It is given unto men to die once, and after that, the judgment. They that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches. Why should I fear in the days of evil? Because, they that trust in their wealth, why should one, I almost wonder if he means, why should one fear? He's saying, because the whole point is saying, I'm going to listen, I'm going to hear, I'm going to listen to this. Why should I fear in the days of evil? It's like, well, here's the parable. This is where the parable kind of begins in verse 6. So this is the answer to it. In parable, not necessarily a colloquial story as Jesus would tell it. There was a certain man, but it is the parable by looking at the example. Parables and similitudes sometimes use similar type of words. I didn't even look at. Let's look at what the word parable here is. All right. Isn't that wonderful? I don't know, whatever. It's still on the stream. Good thing they block all the key information there. Because I'm not that good at hiding things. All right. Open my mouth in a parable. The meditation of my heart shall be of understanding. Yeah, meditation, music, fine. I'm not worried about those words. Let's see. Aha. Mashal. A proverb, comma, parable is what it says. Quick definition. Here we go. Mashal, noun masculine, transliteration, mashal, a proverb, a parable. So any derivation? Apparently from mashal in some original sense of superiority in mental action properly. A pithy maxim, usually metaphorical nature. Hence a simile, adage, poem, discourse, whatever. Okay. So we will define it by what it is rather than by what the word said, by the word itself. And when you're unsure of a definition of a word, you let the context rule your understanding. Hold on a second. All right, there we go. There we go. And that's best. That's best. That's the best thing that shows up there. It keeps it looking clean. So, the parable begins, they that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of the riches. That's what we're going to look at. That's the proverbial class, so to speak. Sorry, I should have muted it. All right, I will next time. I've been pretty decent about that. Okay, they that trust in their wealth. Somebody put in there trust in wealth and riches. I mean, it's the way of the world. Very many, and like I said, it's putting trust in wealth and not in the Lord. But it's not, we only get one life. It is given unto men. Some people think more, whatever, but here's the thing. When I was young and very young, and I knew I could kind of look back into the blackness. I remember just of nothing, just remembering there was no previous blah, blah, not for me, at least. I'm a fresh soul and that, whatever, and so I only have I only know what I know, which is this existence, this life, this consciousness is all I know. And having been given this gift of, I'm a person of some sort. I exist as a human being, and I've been given certain powers and all that. Man, it is good to be alive. I'm glad to be alive. I am. Though sometimes I feel like life is a bit trying, but I'm glad to be alive. And I wouldn't, it's like you have this one opportunity, and will you not? To me, it's like this is the quest for understanding. What's it all about? If there's no purpose to it, You know what I mean? Then whatever. But I think it's then, if there's no purpose, then a great purpose is trying to figure out what the purpose is. Meaning, it's a fine way to spend your life as far as I'm concerned, even if it didn't have a purpose. But the point is, as in searching for that purpose, I found that there are all kinds of clues and stuff, and like little way along the way. It's like, oh, look at I've talked about it too many times about receiving the Holy Spirit with power. Had things happen. So I'm convinced, but it's like you have to, hearing that it's like, whoa, wait, this is important. And we take such careless attitude towards things. I know I have a tendency towards that myself. I'm actually a very fun-loving spirit, to tell you the truth. People, I don't know if that's the impression that people get or what. I don't know. I think a lot of times because I have a dark and dry sense of humor, it does not, that whole fun-loving thing might not come off so clearly. But anyways, we have to engage in this life and find out what it's all about. That to me is a worthy calling in life. And having made the search, I found something. And so, but then to come into this, to be given all that we've been given and given the opportunity, and when people, you could take a more cynical look at the world. That it's like, yeah, it's easy for you to say that, Paul. You were born in the wealthiest country in the world, in a prosperous region, and with every opportunity, every educational advantage, everything possible. People with your same God-given birth gifts, minus all of that, also where you were placed. They'll point out, oh well, I'm like, well, you know what? That's that person's challenge. I don't know. I don't know how to speak to it. I don't. Except that, well, the scripture does. I mean, it's like wherever the calling we are called with, we should be content. Let me tell you, people always think, oh yeah, I'm not saying this is harder by any means. No way than that's the life that some people have. But in some ways, it's like the tar baby in the Briar Rabbit. It's seductive. The seductive nature of sin. The seductive, as you get more, it's so much more dangerous. Like people who live harsh lives where they're struggling for their food don't have time to think about a lot of the things people get up to in these wealthy countries, where people start deciding they want to be different genders than they were born as and stuff and such things. It's all this. We have too much time on our hands. We have too much. I almost said too much freedom, but in a sense of too much freedom of. We can the heart's imagination can be so expressed by so many people because of the wealth. Like they can do things because they have wealth that they couldn't do. They have a sort of an access and that kind of freedom, the freedom that wealth creates. The freedom that I value is the kind that you don't need any money to have. That is the most valuable kind, and even the poor, because with that freedom, the poor man can at least feed himself and make his way through life and continue to exist. But when the powerful, begin to lord it over everyone and they take away our rights, nothing but suffering and death is what's going to result. So, but people instead of saying I've been given this great gift, life, I should seek out God and see what it is. Because I'm not critiquing people who have hard lives or whatever. I'm critiquing this casual disregard. And in the country where you are so blessed, it's also one of the most, or used to be one of the most Christian countries in the world. But somehow we couldn't keep. Somehow, well, I think what it is just the seductiveness of sin and wealth. It seduces. There are a lot of things I haven't done, sins I haven't committed, but that I was never tempted to because they were beyond my means. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I've never even really thought about it. You know what I mean? It's like certain things. Maybe other things I have thought about that, I mean, I always knew I would never see a prostitute, but when people have money and they could, sometimes they find out they do and they can, and they get into trouble that way because they got money. They got too much money. I ran into a guy just in the, he was telling how he spent like $30,000 on scratch-off cards every year. I was just floored, and throwing his money away on these little, I mean, everyone throws their money away on something, right? I mean, money has got to be thrown away on something. You're gonna throw it all away on all that family full of kids. Throw it away on that car. Throw it away on whatever. I mean, obviously, not all things are created equal. Right? You could think about but my point is, you can't hang on to your money forever. You've got to bestow it. Money is one of the gifts I haven't been given in large measure, which is probably good because I don't know if I think I'm almost wise enough to handle money. I'm almost wise enough, not quite. And so I'm thankful that the Lord keeps it far from me. At least in excess of that I'm able to live is sufficient for me. I will be content. That as long as I can live. And I will trust that I'll be able to live. It's hard because sometimes you fear with that lack of wealth, that lack of socking it away like people often do for the retirement. They sock it away, and then in the retirement they take a vacation or two every year. That's their dream. But when you're having that dream, you better not forget about God. You better not forget about what God has called us to. You better not forget about Jesus, who laid his life down on the cross and forsook everything in this world so that we could live forever. It was all about sin. The soul that sins shall die. Why should I fear the days of evil? I'll tell you why. Because there's nothing that can save me from it. People trust in their wealth, they're deceived. There's dark wisdom they're not seeing. They boast themselves in the multitude of their riches. None of them can, and then he goes on to this address about none of them can by any means redeem his brother. I mean, they can't, nor give to God a ransom for him. He's talking about death right away, because without even mentioning it. What he's saying is like, God owns you, your soul. Meaning you will die because God says you will die. Right? You will not live. That is every man's fate, death. And it doesn't get taken away. Unless you should live to see the Lord return, you will die. Unless you live to see that day, as it is written, right? 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. Actually, that's 1 Corinthians 15, isn't it? Because the moment, the twinkling of an eye, we shall not all sleep. Why is it my brain, it's like, I want to know something. What does the language of 1 Thessalonians 4 say? Okay, so, oops, sorry, hold on. I'm going to just bring this up full screen, or semi-full screen. Bible collection main. I have to narrate what I'm doing sometimes, just that helps. Bible collection main. That's what it's called. All right, there we go. So, what I thought was, and this is a psalm that talks about resurrection here. Is that because there's none. The way it's saying is like we'll get to it. But I would not have you ignorant, brethren, 1 Thessalonians 4:13, concerning them which are asleep, that you sorrow not as others, even as others which have no hope. Like I said, dare to hope in a world where you don't trust the Lord. People who dare to think of the future when they don't have Christ. It's foolish. There is no future. I mean, you can go ahead and do it, but it's like one of these days, the dark wisdom is going to bite you. Your lack of the dark wisdom. The wisdom in the dark. The wisdom that sees in the dark. And honestly, and that's the thing, it's like, what kind of, only God can grant that wisdom to, in the darkness, suddenly see. It is light to the blind. It is the healing. The blind receive their sight. I see. Oh my God, there is a hidden wisdom. For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so them also which sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep, not precede. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So shall we ever be with the Lord. But again, it's interesting. That's not when he says you should not all sleep. That is 1 Corinthians. Similar passage. And a lot of times that 1 Thessalonians, I'm not going to turn this into a rapture or an anti-rapture apologetic because there's just no rapture in it. It's the resurrection. And speaking of that great day, I'm tired of letting them always spoil it for me by having to make a big apologetic about it. I mean, go listen to my study on 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. If you really want to detail, I don't want to get into it about the rapture because I don't agree with a lot of people on it, right? I don't believe in the rapture. I believe in the resurrection. I think they've supplanted the doctrine of the resurrection. They've cut it in two and then separated off this rapture thing as this separate thing. And it's just this lie they tell Americans, basically, that you're not going to be here during the tribulation, as Christians are getting beheaded in ISIS and stuff. It's like, what do you they're saying that, oh, God doesn't want his bride to suffer or anything. Give me your donations. Buy our prophecy book. Come to our conference. A bunch of just complete scumbags, Absolutely. The hustlers out there are just disgusting. They will not get away. They're not going to get away. It's funny, though. It kind of cracked. I'm sorry. I don't mean to mock. I laugh a little because I'm mean and I'm cruel and I'm sinful. And I laugh at my enemies when they fall because I'm a bad man. But part of me, whatever. Sorry, Lord. I want to be more merciful because I am the recipient of mercy and I sure need it. Okay, so, brethren, I show you a mystery. Behold, I show you a mystery. See, it's a B word. That's the thing. That's the problem with too many scriptures. Like I'm saying, if you don't really focus on memorizing, you end up with brethren, I show you a mystery as your mind's. Just because you're filling in all the... Because I got so many brethren verses. They're running over all the behold verses, Behold, I show you a mystery. And there's nothing wrong with that. Brethren, I show you a mystery. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trump. For the trumpet shall sound, and the dead shall be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. Yeah, let my greatest error be that I slightly misquote scripture, with words that don't actually change the meaning. And that, honestly, behold, being, like I say, let's say someone actually writing the Bible, let's say they were a copyist. That'd be the kind of error you end up with actually quite a bit in the copying of the Bible in ancient times. You get a B word translated into another B word that fits so that the brain doesn't pick up on the fact that they've changed it. And there are several small differences like that, where the shape of one letter is you could be looking at a really old manuscript and be like, is that a what is it? Where are some similar looking Hebrew letters? I don't know. Is that a D or an M? I forgot. Was that a D? Or was that an R or a D? I think those two look really similar. And if it's an R, it makes it brethren. If it's a D, it makes it behold. It's not like that. I'm just, using that as an example. And similar, that's the kind of, people say copying errors. That's the only kind. The majority of errors are very much like that, or like a little word gets left out, or a little word kind of pops in because maybe it like just helps the sentence flow better, and maybe just a verse back it had been in, or there's all kinds of ways that little things happen. But unlike monkeys banging on typewriters, people who copy the scriptures can read what they're copying. I guess that's my dismissing the idea of like, they treat the copying of the Bible as if it's the telephone game. You know what I mean? Or oral tradition, that it's the telephone game. They don't understand the power of oral tradition. Like that the point that you make people learn these things very carefully. And the changes are going to be pretty much along the same lines. You get the major story right, unless someone just decides to change the story, which can happen, That's true. But it's not like the telephone game where it's just organically people getting the wrong idea because they don't hear. When you're told something once, well, what about when you're told something 50,000 times? Think you can get it right after 50,000 times? Yeah. And that's what it's more like. Anyways. So I like those resurrection passages in combination with this. I wanted to keep them in mind. All right, stop it. Thank you. All right. You can't redeem your brother, nor give to God for all my wealth, all the money I have in the world, I can't take that and then give it to God and have him save my brother. I can't redeem my brother, my lost brother. Even if I'm well, there's nothing I can do to help someone. There's no payment I can offer. There's nothing in this world which God has, other than the blood of Christ, for this, as far as for redeeming your soul from death. There is no set price. There is no, there isn't any, there's no amount of goats you can sacrifice. There's no amount of money you can donate to the temple. In the Old Testament, there is no price for your soul. You cannot buy it back. You can't buy it from someone else. Only God in his mercy can give it to you as something for you to possess, to have life. You know what I mean? When God breathed into the nostrils of Adam the breath of life, man became a living soul. Right? And so man, we have a soul, right? We are, not just so much we have a soul, but we are souls. You know what I mean? We are souls, but in a sense that we are alive, we possess our souls. Our souls are possessed literally by a living spirit which has been breathed into us and given life. Because I could be a dead soul. It talks about dead souls. That's when I'm dead. The idea of me still exists. Like Paul Strangini, God technically can remember me forever. And he can snap his fingers and bring me back to life without a thought. Because he can do stuff like that. He did the whole universe, It's like when Mario falls off the cliff. You know what I mean? It's like he's got another life. He can just come back at the beginning and try again. That's how God. That's what we're in his simulation. It's a simulated universe. They say, okay, whatever. Maybe it is. Who's running the simulation? God is in charge of our simulation, if it's such a thing. And it's like, I'm like, what do you thought? Reality is simulated. That's like circular. It's like, yeah, whatever. Then what's the point? Reality is a simulation. So reality doesn't exist, or simulation is reality. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's just a circular. I don't get it. Like it's all running on a computer somewhere. Okay, on a computer where? Computers don't just. I don't buy that really at all. Though the sentiment I agree with completely. You mean as far as like we think this is real, and it is. Because it is, we developed that word to describe what this is. So it is real. Because We say, like when Dawkins talks about the magic of reality, he means the physical world. It's like, yeah. It is real. But also, the things we call laws are merely fixed things that we cannot transcend. The idea of external things we have the world of reality, but there's also a world that is external to that, which is not contained in that. That is God. Now, God's not a world per se, but he is a person, a living being that is external to the world and created the world. And if you want to call that a simulated reality, you go right ahead. But, in this life we've been given, we become living souls and we die. And then in that sense, because we no longer have a living spirit possessing our souls become dead. And though we exist on a certain level, because it could be redeemed. Because God knows. Just like Julius Caesar's still sitting, he's laying around somewhere. Even if he was scattered to the four winds, that God remembers the DNA and everything. He can put him back together just as he was and put the soul of him into him and animate him with the same spirit and bring him back just like he had been. That's the power of resurrection. He can bring us back from being dead. A lot of people don't believe in death. Because when you die, you're dead. And people say, what happens to your soul? Well, your soul is basically dead too. But like your body, it doesn't go anywhere. You know what I mean? The dead soul just remains. It doesn't disappear. It doesn't go poof into nothingness. It's just like when you go to it's not like when someone I love dies, if I go to their funeral, they haven't ceased to exist. We still know, they existed, but they're dead now. They're just not animated by a living spirit in this world. They do not possess their soul. They need to redeem their soul from the power of the grave. That's what Jesus is all about. Redeeming your soul from the power of a grave. The redemption of the soul is precious. It costs a lot. And it ceaseth forever. I'm guessing that's a bad translation. Let's see what they say in a different, the King James, I feel, has let us down there. Let's see what we can get here at the good old Bible Hub. The Bible, it's funny because I haven't even, they have on this drop-down menu for the Bible, I usually looked at I just noticed how long the scroller bar is, the versions and stuff they have. It's really a great site. I don't know, maybe they do something terrible. I don't know anything about them beyond just this, and it's nice, it's free. You don't have to be a member or nothing. Very nice. I'm not copying their site. This is education reporting. I'm not making people worry about copyright. If I were to copy their website and then make a duplicate, that would be a violation. But I always direct people, you use it too. Well, we're just using little pieces of it here for the purposes of education. So that is that is actually what they call, acceptable use. I forgot what it was, the word. I used to be all appraised on the copyright stuff until I stopped worrying about it because I realized fair use was what it was and all that. As long as you're within the right things, there's no sane lawyer would sue you for fair use because it will obviously fail. Well, some people get intimidated by lawsuits and stuff, so whatever. Music and movies are different. I'm just talking about something like this. It's, just like people are allowed to read parts of books and stuff. So, our word here was down. My scroller mouse isn't working right, so it always, when I scroll, it goes up. When I scroll down, it goes up. When I scroll up, it goes up. Actually, it just kind of jams and it goes down, I guess. Precious. It ceaseth for... Oh, I wanted to actually look at verse 8. Well, let's find another translation. Let's just use the Satan translation, the NIV, because everyone hates the NIV. What happened? I must have done something wrong. That's what happened. So they say the ransom for a life is costly. No payment is ever enough. I like that. That's kind of the feeling I was getting. There was something like that. I should have given you like an estimate of what it ought to be, so we could test my ability to estimate what the actual translation would be without actually looking at references. Because sometimes actually after a while you sort of get the gist. But sometimes it's like sometimes you see a situation that reminds you of something you've seen before, but it's not the same. Let's try a different modern translation just so we don't rely only on the New International Version, which is, as I call it, the Devil's Translation. I'm kidding. All right. So, for the redemption of his soul is priceless, and he should cease imagining forever that he might live on eternally. Oh, so they connect it to the next verse. So they went with it. So there's some debate, though. Honestly, I gotta say I'm partial to the NIV, and I think the King James, if we read it, it'll do. The redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever. I probably should have. I'm just going to quickly hover over that ceaseth in my thing here. You may not see it. Well, you won't see the actual what I see when it hovers, but ceaseth is shadal, to cease. Okay, I'm not going to bring up the full definition. I don't think it's worth it. So, okay, so the redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever. It's something like, it basically means there's no hope. That's basically, there's no hope to redeem the soul. It's priceless. There's some sort of everlasting, there's no end, or it's endless. Maybe that's the kind, or whatever. Whatever the NIV said, I'm pretty content with that. Basically, the idea is that it's just reaffirming what the first clause says. The first clause says the soul is precious, and the second one is saying something along those lines. But mostly you can't afford it. You don't have enough money. You just don't have enough money because it requires infinite amount of money. Well, because that's what I was thinking. Because eternal life, what, you're going to live forever? Do you know how much that costs? And what do you have to pay for it? All the money you earn in your lifetime, it's not enough. Or the New American Standard, which says you should just give up. He should give up. That he should still live forever and not see corruption. But I thought, that's the goal. That you cannot redeem your soul and cause yourself to live forever. There's no price you can pay in your gold and silver. For he sees that wise men die. Likewise, the fool and the brutish person perish and leave their wealth to others. They see all this happening. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. They leave their wealth to others. They see that the wise and the fool and the brutish, they all die, and they leave their wealth to others. And they think their houses, meaning their posterity, I'll leave it to others, and then they'll leave it to others, and then what I've done will endure forever. I used to think that way about like guys like George Washington. Not exactly like they'll last forever, but like I think like look at they got statues of him. He's an important guy that's still from 200 years later they still teach about him, right? And he's been dead a long time. But then last year they started pulling down his Was it George Washington statues? I don't know if they pulled down any George Washington statues just yet, but, they were pulling down Jefferson. So, they will, what I'm saying is, like, men have fame, but it doesn't last forever. It may last for a time. It may last for centuries. The pharaohs thought they could take their gold with them, but the thieves, by the time the scientists got there, the thieves had already made out with just about everything. Like almost every tomb had already been robbed. There were so few left, except for that obscure Tutankhamun, and he was obscure. Their mummies were dug up, and their bones were scattered in the desert by people that did not care that they were great kings. They just wanted to take up their gold. And that's the thing. It's like, even them, they thought, a couple thousand years later, they're digging you up and kicking your skull around in the sand. You're nobody. You're a dead soul. And nobody who cared about you is alive anymore to take care of your corpse. You're better off buried in an unmarked grave, man, than some big monument. They're going to come after you, parade you around. So they think they can set it up so it's like, well, I will establish an everlasting line of succession. Well, they don't necessarily think like that, but they just don't think about the end of it. They don't see how it'll end. It will end. They think, well, it'll go on. They don't add forever. A lot of times it's like, well, I'll leave it to my children and then they will prosper. They name places after their own names, I remember seeing a guy had named a farm after him, and then I remember hearing just like a year later, that guy was not among the living anymore, Okay, nevertheless being man. All right. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. Meaning, your honor, like I said about Pharaoh. I just made this point about the Pharaoh. Your honor, that honor of the dead does not abide. And the honoring of your wishes after you're dead doesn't abide. People routinely do things against people's wishes when they die. It just happens all the time. Especially the longer they're dead. Like I said, it happens in small and big ways. He's like the beast that perish. The man in honor, he's no different than an animal, ultimately. The honor does not stick. This their way is their folly, yet their posterity approve their sayings. So their way is their folly, yet they that come after them, those who receive the largesse from their ancestors, who receive, they say, oh, no, that's the way. That's right. And they pause right there. The parable of the folly of the rich. Like sheep, they are laid in the grave. They say like sheep. Why is it like sheep? I was like, oh, like sheep. Well, meaning they follow each other like sheep, right down into the grave, like sheep. Death shall feed on them. This is a little dark parable. Death feeds on them. Meaning they will die, and they will decay, and death will do its work. It will consume them away. And the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning. I believe that is, I get, I when it says that, I just think, okay, is that resurrection? Because it's about to talk about it. The upright in the morning, when the resurrection comes, the dominion belongs to the upright, to those that sought God, to those who did with what they were given in their life, who used it for good, for used their powers, their lives to one, turn from sin into the Lord Jesus. And then two, then you do what he says. You follow him according to faith. Learn what that means for you. You should be attentive to that because it's a big deal that he laid his life down for you. So you should have an appropriate response of interest and care for, well, what do I do with that then? And now that I'm saved, I'm going to live forever. How should I order my life now, in preparation for that, and in natural gratitude for that? Because the problem is that we often, while we are very thankful often for the release of the guilty feelings about sin, we do not have the proper grasp of the magnitude of the gifts that God has given us. So we don't rejoice as much as we should in the things God has blessed us in. We should really actually have a greater appreciation than we do. And so anyways, but when we rise from the dead, dominion will belong to the upright, not to those whose sins have compassed them about in the days of evil. As the days wear on, and we come to those evil days when we die, we want to have our sins far behind us, and the Lord close to us. I want to be close to the Lord and far from my sins. That's what to me it seems, what else, I'm ready for your kingdom, O Lord. I want to say that I'm ready to die because now I can enter into God's kingdom. I'm fully prepared. So, we have to be mindful of that. Okay, so their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling. I don't know what's from their dwelling. From their dwelling there, meaning like the consumption comes from the dwelling. Let me see. Death shall feed on them, over them, and their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling. Maybe because they abide there. But God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. Yeah. They will dwell in the house of corruption and consume away. But God will redeem us. He will redeem our souls from the power of the grave. We die and become dead, and like our bodies, we cease to be alive. But God redeems our souls and brings us back to life. Now, some people believe that when you die, this sort of automatically happens and then you step into God's kingdom, meaning like as if, and here's the funny thing is I generally agree. I don't believe, but here's the thing. I believe when you die, the next thing you know will be the Lord. It will be like a night's sleep. It will be, that's what it means by in the morning. That's the reference, in the morning, because it's when you get up. Because that's what the morning is. It's when you get up. That's why it's resurrection. That's why I'm not like off my rocker saying that's the resurrection. It immediately evokes thoughts of resurrection. And in the next verse, it nails it down, and we're talking about resurrection. Whatever. Well, we are, when we're dead, we don't experience, like I said, it's like a night's sleep, like a really peaceful night's sleep that has no dreams. So when you die, you'll just wake up and be like, oh, I'm alive again. That's how I do think death is. But here's the catch, where I differ from everyone else. Because they would say I believe in soul sleep because I believe that in the earthly time frame, when you die, it's not like I'm dead and then I'm like, oh, I wake up and like, oh, it's the Lord. I'm alive again. I've risen from the dead, right? And then I'm like, oh, and there I am. I'm laying down on the ground, right? I'm looking at myself. I'm separate from myself somehow. I'm separate from my body. I'm a disembodied spirit now, and I've taken the soul away from the body or something. I don't know how that's not a I don't know what to say. That's not right. but 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 anyways, and so like, and then I could conceivably watch my funeral. What I mean, obviously we don't know what the rules are as far as the mechanism of like, okay, there's an escalator up here, or maybe a down escalator. I always wondered about that sort of mythology about that death, because what should happen is Jesus Christ appears in the sky, and I'm like, there he is, and we go. That's what, or I'm like, oh, I'm awake. Whoa, here we go. That's what that's about all. That's about all she wrote. Yeah, I mean, there should be no, when I'm dead, I go right to the Lord. And it's the last day, and he's there, and it's the end of the world, and it's the beginning of God's kingdom. That's what I believe happens when I die. But it doesn't happen here on earth. When I die, the world ends, and Jesus comes back. That's what happens when I die. You know what I mean? That's the next thing. It's, but it's like, hide thyself as it were for a little moment till the indignation be overpassed. It's just a brief thing. So, people call that soul sleep, and what it really is just, it's perspective. It's the problem of pieces in the book of Revelation that things beyond our sensing are. I remember talking to them about that. They can't. Those things aren't real. And I get what they're saying, but it's like, well, we have imaginary numbers and unreal numbers. It's just things that are in irrational numbers. There are other things just that aren't real to us, but exist in their own way, not apart from us. Then that's the Lord. And that's also ideas. They also exist in another realm, another dimension, sort of. That's my own thought. God shall redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. The point is like, we have to think about the redemption of our soul. Or as Christians, we need to think from the perspective as having been redeemed. Because there is something that comes with, there's a responsibility that comes with being redeemed. That you should not just bury your faith in the earth and just and live life as a normal person, like a rich person in America. Like I said, the riches are the greatest part of the problem. It does make it hard. It is harder to, Jesus said, when I said earlier, I wasn't trying to say life was harder for people like in my country than for people who struggle. But I'll tell you what, it's harder to serve God. It's harder to live for God than it is for someone who's poor. And this is a point Jesus makes. How hardly shall a rich man enter into the kingdom of heaven? Well, by the world's standards, the Americans are all rich, man. We all are going to, we're becoming a parable unto ourselves as far as what's, the fall of a once great nation. It's going to, it'll go on, but it's like, and it's, everything has its own time, and it's got to go. And if things get too big, they must be cut down to size. That's just the way it is. So we are at the end of our hour, and while I would like to finish this psalm, we have too many verses here to talk about. We'll finish it up and go into Psalm 50 tomorrow. I was just reading it. I'm not going to try to wrap it up in 5 minutes. We'll just leave it for tomorrow. We'll have a little bit of a split study. The Psalms are not all going to be done in, one study, each of them. That's just, I kind of liked that happened a couple times, but it's just not going to work. So thanks for joining me in this study. We'll pick up these thoughts tomorrow. Until then, thank you for joining me. Until next time.
I will declare the decree. Yahweh has said to me, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt